Hi everyone, I am going to do a bit of a demonstration on some fabric painting using the Lumiere paints. So this is just a variety of them. I have water because they're water soluble, and just one or two brushes. I'm not going to probably only ever use one, but these paints are all luminescent, so they're all got a shine to them. So you can see here they've got a bit of a shine. Underneath that I have a bit of wadding, it's actually bag batting, just to help stop it going through to the table. Now I tend to, which is really naughty, is give them a shake, and also you're going to need a rag or they call them serviettes, paper towel. And I use the lids, which is really naughty. I tend to, and these get used a lot in classes and stuff, but when you use a lid, sometimes they get stuck, like this one, and they can get hard to open, so just be aware. That one might need a little bit more. And then I make sure that the pots of them are a long way away from what I'm working on, so that I don't actually get, I don't tip them over, because you tip them over, it's disastrous. This one might be a bit hard. Oh, there we go. So I'd suggest not to do as I do, but the idea would be to scoop out some from each pot. And then you can get it off the plate. I've really stuck that one down. There it is. There we go. Got them all. There we are. So these are the ones that I'm actually using. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just show you how I work it. Now these are quite opaque and they're quite thick, so I tend to, I've just got my water over this side. I wet my brush, but I always take the excess off. You don't want any drips coming down that brush. If it comes down, it's going to make it really watery. The beauty of these paints are they are thick, and you tend to excuse me, you tend to actually not have to worry about it dripping or anything like that. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to paint around these. Now I'm going to do them a nice pink. They're the flower. So, but I'm also going to use another color for shading. So I'm hoping you can see what I'm doing. So basically I'm going to just fill in the area. Now the design I've drawn on, I have drawn on with a template that I've used, and I do have them for sale. They're 38 and they're about 16.5 inches square. So this brush is probably a little bit stiff, but it'll do the job. So paint on and paint up to the lines. And when you're coming up to the one beforehand, come from the inside and push the paint up to the edge and run it along. I like these flat edge brushes because they've got a sharp edge to them, which means that when I come up to a line, I get a nice sharp edge as I work it around. When I use a rounded brush, it tends to take away. I get a more of a flared look on the brush. So, and you'll notice I use the brush a lot from in the angle where my brush is upright, so it's on an upright position. So I'm just filling in that area. Yep, got a hair on there. Any hair and stuff like that, or threads, get them out now. Once the paint's dry, you can't get them out. It'll leave a mark. If you've got excess paint, just scoop it up or move it. It's nice and thick, so it works really well like that. I tend to get this all over my hands. It does wash off, like I said, in water. So it's safe to use. This is a fabric paint. They're called Lumiere paints, and they are designed for fabric. You heat set them, so you just iron it once it's all dry. Of course, don't do it while it's wet. And once it's dry and you've ironed it, you can then wash and all that sort of stuff. You don't need to use a fabric medium because they are a fabric paint. You'd only use a fabric medium if you're using something like acrylic paints, just plain old acrylic paints. You might then use a fabric medium. So you can see I've got that there. I might see if I can get that up a little closer. Bear with me while I try and move the camera for you. And tip that down. I'm just going to rinse out my brush. To clean out your brushes, just use a bit of detergent, like dishwashing detergent. And yeah, so just make sure all those drips are wiped off. Now to do my dark area, I'm actually going to grab a purple and just dip it in just a little bit. And I'm coming on the inside there. And I've got my brush on an angle that is straight up and down. Just dip that end in. If you got too much, wipe it off. And just flare it out. Just like that. And just softly, very softly, make it blend. So start in there, bring it up. Now I'm not worrying too much about the colours, like the edges of if I've got a little bit of a white gap, or you can see the pencil, because pretty much you're going to paint just about over the whole thing, and the pencil line is where I'm going to stitch. So that shows you how that has changed that. I could add a little bit more if I wanted to. You just got to be careful not to do too much. So you don't want any definite lines. You want to blend, and to get that paint to sort of become soft and feathered, I'm just very lightly touching the two paints together, sort of brushing over the top of them. And that's one done. So I would now go and do the others, but I'm going to do a different area so you can see something else. Because I tend to do the same thing, I'll repeat the same process so I don't forget. So, because, we forget what we've done. So these leaf-like things I'm going to do in a, probably in that lighter green. It's quite thick. So I'm going to paint in there, and I'm just going to fill them in probably one at a time. I'm going to get my olive green out. You do have to work reasonably quick because they are still an acrylic paint. That's what makes them wash out, and they do dry fairly quick. So you do still have to work reasonably quick with your shading, or you'll have to add more paint in so that it's wet. It won't shade very well if it's not still wet. So I'm just filling in one, come into the second, and you'll see that, and you can paint on any fabric, probably, they say you can paint on silk with it, but it tends to sit on the top of silk, not go into the fibres. So that's the only thing with silk, and sateen type fabrics, they tend to sit on the top, which means they can crack off. Whereas when they're sitting like this, they tend to just sort of go into the fibres of the fabric. So I'm going to grab a little bit of dark green, the olive green, and I'm just touching those areas there and around here. And again, I've got my brush in the upright position, and I'm just dabbing it on, taking off the excess on my rag there that I've got, and I'm just blending that in from this side. You can see I'm working towards the center from the outside in, just like that. And then I just wheel myself around or move myself around, or, you know, reposition the actual painting and make it blend. I've got to come from the right direction. Try not to work over your wet, so don't work here and then go over there. You'll end up dragging the wet paint across your clean area. And just give it a soft brush. You can go across the top of it. I've still got a little bit of darker paint on there, just a little bit along the top there, not a lot, and clean that off and swap back over to the lighter one. And you can see how just that tiny little bit of colour change. And I'm only using two colours, the green and a darker green. Get that one going. And you'll see them starting to take a bit of shape. This helps give it a bit of depth rather than just being a flat colour. Gives them shape. Got a hair in there, got to get him off quickly. Wash that out. And swap over my colours. Oops a days, got my finger stuck in it already. Just the end of it in there. And with the I nearly said pencil, with the brush upright, just dab around those edges there that you want to darken. Take off the excess and then just smooth that out, working from the outside in. If you have too much paint on your brush too, you can always take it off using your palette as well. Just sort of wipe the excess onto your palette. Alrighty, next ones. So I'm sort of doing 2 leaves at a time. And I'll let you know there's no real right and wrong. You can do this any which way you like. You know, you can do them all in gold and you can do them all in silver. You can do whatever you like. There's no right and wrong. The only thing I'm showing you is how to do a bit of shading. And yeah. And then the rest is really up to you. What you want it to look like. It is your art piece after all. It's your piece of work. If you notice, I tend to work from edges and work my way in. So I'll go to an edge and then drag it in or run it along very carefully. So I've run it along there and I'm brushing it in. We also find having the wadding underneath actually stops the fabric from moving around too, because when it's on a flat hard surface or plastic, I find that the fabric can move around a bit. So this sort of helps hold it still a little. So just little touches around. And I'm adjusting the angle of the brush as I go. Taking off the excess and then just feathering that out from, I just got some on my hand, so I don't want to get it on the actual piece. So feather, just lightly touch and drag is the feathering. You touch it and you drag it into the center. Just like that. Okay, so that's those done. Now, I've got some white there. I'm just going to pop this aside and just quickly show you something before I go any further. This is just a pearl white. I'm going to use the end of this, dip it in, and I'm going to, on something I've already painted, I'm going to drop in probably 2 at a time. They'll take a while to dry, so be very careful not to touch them. You can do more than 2 at a time, but they'll get smaller each time you touch it. And you'll notice they've got a little bubble on them, so you'll have to get a pin and just come back and touch that. Get rid of that little bubble. Looks all right. And don't forget to clean the top of your thing. So we've now put like little doodahs all around there. And what you do is you get yourself a pin and you'll see that they've got like little bubbles. So you just go in and break the bubbles. Because when it dries, it'll leave a little hole. Alrighty. Okay. Now, moving on to these ones, I'm going to do one of these and then I'll finish up for this one. But I'm going to do one of these and I'm going to show you the how I did this look, just in a different colour. So I'm going to do it in purple and a bit of white, which will make it look like a lighter purple and a dark. So first things first, I'm going to actually do the white and basically painting half. So go along that top edge, drag it along, and I'll come from inside and work it up to that line. I have said this, I've got a little drop in there, like I must have smudged it at one point. If you do have that, don't stress, you can actually paint over it. It's no big deal. Unless it's not a painted area, but you might have to make it a painted area. So I'm just going to add a little bit more white. I want it fairly more white than not. And then this side here. So the outside there. Into that swirl. You probably can't see this very well on camera, but you'll see it once I start adding the purple to it. So I'm just going around that edge there. Pop the white back over here. Just move the camera over a little. Wash that white out. Still working fairly quickly. Working on my purple now. Bring it around that line. And in. And feather. Do that feather thing again and I'll show you what else we're going to do. And then come in here. Feather it in. Now I'm going to start doing a bit of a circular motion. I want to build it up into that white area because I don't want to leave that white, you won't see it. And then just gently brush that purple into the white. So I'm sort of dragging it across and then wiping it gently over. So I create a dark and a light. And in here, just take off the excess, I've got a lot there. Again, just sort of feather it in. To create that swirl. Now if you want to go back and put a little bit more purple in, you can. Less is more at the start. You can always add. You can't take it away. So just a little bit there. and just smoothing it out. Okay, we've got a nice purple swirl, and I'll continue those all the way around. It'll all look the same. And what I might do is with these swirls, I know it's still wet. I normally wouldn't do this until it dries, but I'm going to come in and I'm going to dot 2, 3, do a gap, 1, 2, 3, do a gap, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now as they get into that bit here, I'm just going to get them smaller like that. You can see that one's got a bit of a bubble. And then I'm going to come in here on this angle, 2, 3, 1, and I'll get them smaller. And the way to get them smaller is just not to keep reloading that paintbrush. Just need that tiny little bit in that one. There we go. And that's done. And I think what I'll do is in these ones, those ones in the middle, those gaps, I'm going to put a bigger one and a bigger one, and you just give it a bit of a swirl to get that bigger one in there and a bigger one. So might make that one a bigger one. Clean off your brush. You need to get your little you can use a toothpick too, but pin works just fine. And just move that paint around so you bust that bubble. You don't want that bubble busting. And that is pretty much that done. I now have to wait for that to dry. On a good day, you can take it outside and give it a quick dry in the sun. It doesn't take more than 10 minutes. Cooler days like today, you sort of need to leave it overnight. Let it dry properly. So that is that so far. So the other thing too, you can grab, see if that brush will do it. I'll just, I might test it first. Might need a different brush than that one. Just have a quick look at what I got. This one might do it. I'm going to test out here because this area out here don't matter. Doesn't matter what colour I choose. I'm just going to test out here. Just get that on there. All right. I reckon that might be too big. This one might do it. Just use a small one. Yep. Okay, so all I've done is pick a smaller brush, and all I'm going to do is in probably the center of each one of these, just come up with a quick line like that. Careful not to touch your white dots. That makes it look different again, doesn't it? Okay. And that circle one here, that first one, I think we just need a little bit of pink in there. Just coming up with the more definite edge. And I'll just blend it in a little bit just to make it a bit darker. And you can see, because it's the rest of it's dry, it doesn't blend as well, but I'll show you something. I've got to get that paint off that brush first. Just get the brush and just work it in again. Just be careful not to overdo it. There we go, that's a little bit better. You can grab a tiny little bit of the purple, and I mean a tiny bit, just here in that center bit there. Just drag it up, make it very, very light, and that will also help give it a bit of depth. All right, so that's a little bit of fabric painting. I hope you enjoy that. That's around about half an hour's work, and we've just done pretty much that around there and that there, and had a bit of a chat at the same time. So the paints are called Lumiere, and there's different types. You can go to the website, the W's at michellespatchwork.com, or you can message me on Facebook on Michelle's Patchwork and Art, and I'm more than happy to help you out with your selection if you decide to do them, and the products that you'll need. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.